Loneliness. A word feared by many, a feeling we all try to escape. And yet, it is one of the most universal and unavoidable experiences of human life. We run from it, we numb it, we deny it. But sooner or later, loneliness finds us. And when it does, we are forced to face not the absence of others, but the presence of ourselves. We mistake loneliness for emptiness. We think it is proof that we are unloved, unwanted, or abandoned. But loneliness is not the absence of others. Loneliness is the return to yourself. It is life's way of calling you back to the place you've been avoiding the most, your own soul. Carl Jung once wrote that loneliness comes not from having no people around you, but from being unable to share what feels important to you. In other words, true loneliness is not measured by numbers, but by depth. You can be in a room full of people and feel utterly alone if your soul has no space to breathe, no place to express itself. Think about your own life. How many times have you smiled in conversations, laughed at jokes, nodded at stories, and yet felt completely unseen? How many relationships have you kept not because they nourished you, but because they distracted you? How many hours have you spent scrolling, posting, and consuming noise, only to end the day with the same quiet ache inside? This is the modern tragedy. We are more connected than ever, and yet we have never felt so alone. But here is the secret. Loneliness is not your enemy. Loneliness is your teacher. It strips away illusions. It silences the noise. It forces you to face what you've buried. And in that silence, you begin to hear the faint voice of the soul you abandoned long ago. Nietzsche said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." Loneliness is that price. It is the toll you pay on the road to authenticity. To live truthfully, you must leave behind the masks, the personas, the performances that the world rewards. And when you set them down, you will feel the weight of solitude. But that solitude is not a void. It is a furnace. It burns away what is false and refines what is real. Imagine loneliness as a desert. At first, it feels unbearable. The silence is deafening. The sun exposes every weakness, every fear, every craving for escape. You thirst for distraction. You crave the oasis of company. But if you endure the desert long enough, you realize the silence is not empty. It is alive. The desert is not punishment, it is purification. And loneliness is not only a desert. Sometimes it is an ocean. On the surface, it seems endless, dark, and terrifying. You float, uncertain, afraid of sinking. But if you dive beneath, you discover that what looked like emptiness is full of hidden life. The deeper you go, the more beauty you see. This is how solitude works. It feels unbearable at the surface, but in its depths, it is full of richness and wisdom. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps, said that everything can be taken from a person except one thing: the freedom to choose one's attitude. Loneliness is one of those moments. You cannot always choose whether you will be abandoned, betrayed, or misunderstood. But you can choose whether loneliness will break you or awaken you. Consider the many forms of loneliness. The loneliness of love, when your heart is rejected or abandoned. This pain teaches you that the love you seek outward must first be cultivated inward. The loneliness of success, when you reach the top and find that no one truly understands your struggle. This reveals that applause is not intimacy, and recognition is not belonging. The loneliness of loss, when someone you cherish is gone. This loneliness teaches impermanence, the fragility of life, and reminds you that the one companion you will always have is yourself. The loneliness of the crowd, when you stand among many, smiling, talking, blending in, but your soul feels invisible. This reveals that authenticity is far more valuable than popularity. The loneliness of childhood, the quiet ache of the child who feels unseen, who is told to be quiet, who hides their true self to earn love. This early solitude leaves marks that echo into adulthood, teaching us that sometimes we first learn loneliness in the very place we expected safety. The loneliness of the artist, the creator who brings forth something unique, only to find that the world may not yet understand. But this loneliness too is sacred, for all innovation is born in solitude before it is celebrated in the crowd. Every form of loneliness is a mirror. It shows you the part of yourself you have ignored. It points to the wound you haven't healed, the truth you haven't faced. And yet, instead of facing it, we run. We drown in entertainment. We numb with addictions. We bury ourselves in productivity. We cling to shallow relationships. Anything but silence. Because silence feels like death to the ego. But to the soul, silence is birth. This is why loneliness hurts so deeply. It is not because you lack others. It is because you lack yourself. The pain of loneliness is the pain of self-abandonment. But if you dare to stay, if you dare to sit in the silence, loneliness transforms. The ache softens. The emptiness becomes space. The darkness reveals light, and the shadow becomes your guide. Kierkegaard once wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly, as if it were nothing at all." Loneliness prevents that. It is the alarm bell of the soul. It is the reminder that you exist, that you have a self-worth returning to. And Blaise Pascal wrote centuries ago, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Think about that. Centuries have passed, but the truth remains. Our greatest fear is not outer danger, but inner silence. So the question is not, how do I escape loneliness? The question is, what is it trying to teach me? And if you listen, loneliness whispers its lessons. It teaches you to respect yourself. It teaches you that not all company is nourishing. It teaches you that silence is not the enemy. It teaches you that the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. When you embrace loneliness, you find strength. When you stop running, you find clarity. When you surrender to solitude, you find truth. Loneliness is not emptiness. It is transformation. It is the sacred passage where the old self dies and the new self is born. The desert becomes an oasis. The ocean becomes a source of life. The night becomes dawn. The wound becomes a scar. The scar becomes wisdom. So the next time you feel alone, don't rush to escape. Don't run to the crowd. Don't fill the silence with noise. Instead, breathe. Listen. Ask yourself, what part of me have I abandoned? What truth is waiting to be heard? Loneliness is not the absence of others. It is the return to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that is the greatest gift life could give you.